I want to first talk about Assange. His lawyers say Sweden's extradition request is illegal and actually contradicts British law. How do you see this?
Well, of course, it's up to the British court to decide that, and they have decided it, and I disagree with them, and I think it's a real shame. All Assange is wanted for is questioning. He's not been charged. He could have done the questioning by Skype. There's no need to go to Sweden to be questioned. So this is a very extraordinary extradition to bring him to Sweden, and if this goes through, and Julian Assange's choices are getting more and more limited. If this goes through in the next 10 days and he goes to Sweden, they have very strict pretrial detention policies, and he'll probably be held in pretrial detention pending this case. So that could take a while. And so this is really, they've had Julian Assange really in their capture now for quite a while, and it's getting more and more serious.
The U.S. is investigating Assange over espionage allegations and appears to be keen to see him on American soil. Do you think this is likely to happen, that he'll be handed over to the U.S.? And if he is, what will happen to him?
Well, there has definitely been a grand jury investigating Wikileaks, including Julian Assange. They've called witnesses. There have been rumors that there is a sealed, in other words, a secret indictment already against Julian Assange, but there may not be. We don't really know the answer to that. At this point, nothing has been released about that. If there is an indictment and he is extradited to the United States, there'll be a long battle about that as well, then the charges will be very serious ones, and there'll be ones that will define press freedom and government transparency for the 21st century. They are really would be a really critically important case, and the stakes would be very high for Julian Assange. They'd be very serious, and so it's worrisome, but this is really the battle that seems to be coming if the rumors we're hearing about a secret indictment are true.
Some U.S. politicians have described Assange as a high-tech terrorist, but don't you think his role in WikiLeaks did pose a threat to the U.S.?
I think he's a high-stakes journalist who does not kowtow to the authority of governments, especially a government like the United States that's involved in trying to rule the world through expansive military empire, extreme economic power, and political power. And so he's been challenging not just the United States, but its allies. He's made a lot of enemies by doing what journalists should all be doing, which is getting out the truth. Some of the truths that Julian Assange has gotten out have shown that from the lowest levels to the highest levels of our military and our State Department, there are crimes being committed, up to Hillary Clinton signing a memo ordering our diplomats to spy on diplomats coming to the United Nations, which is illegal. She should be being prosecuted, not Julian Assange. And so it's a real shame that the transparency that Mr. Assange has brought to the world is being met with the fear and repercussions that's being threatened against him, because what he has done merely has been getting out the truth, and that truth is what's really frightening to the United States.
I want to talk a bit more about Bradley Manning and his case. His lawyers claim he's not being allowed to a fair trial. Presumably you agree. Why do you think this is allowed to happen?
Well, this is allowed to happen because the government, the United States government, wants to make an example of Bradley Manning, to send a warning to anyone else who will report crimes, unethical behavior, and war crimes. In fact, the trial has been a charade from the beginning. He was held in solitary confinement for nearly a year before even being charged. The President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, has announced him guilty on videotape. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, those are the two highest military officials, the Commander-in-Chiefs and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, have also announced him guilty, and that was published in Stars and Stripes, the semi-official publication of the Department of Defense. And so they've sent a message down the line to everybody who works in the military that the top two military officials have found this person guilty. And I can't imagine anyone who wants a career in the military going against the Commander-in-Chief and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. As a result, the military prosecutors have been playing very much a game of hiding the facts, not allowing the defense to get documents that it's required to be provided under law, materials that are material to the defense, relevant to the defense, and therefore should be made available, are not being made available. So it's looking like a bit of a kangaroo court, and a railroading of Bradley Manning in order to make an example of him. And it's another example of the lack of transparency in the Obama administration and the fear of the truth when it's shown about the American empire.
Well, the argument is that Manning is accused, of course, of aiding the enemy because of the biggest leak of state secrets in American history. At least some will argue that that's the way it was. Do you think his alleged activity could have put the lives of Americans at risk? I mean, that's going to be the argument we're going to hear, as well as presumably with Assange.
Well, that's a really interesting question because the defense in the Manning case has been trying to get a number of reports that have been done by the CIA, by the FBI, by the State Department, by the Department of Defense that looked into the impact of these leaks. And we've heard former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, we've even heard Secretary of State Clinton minimizing the impact of these leaks. And so we suspect that because the government's been hiding these reports, that in fact they would show there was no serious adverse effect on national security. There was certainly an adverse effect on individuals who were breaking the law and acting unethically. They were, and there's embarrassment to the U.S. empire, but no one has been killed by this. There's been no adverse effect along the undermining of U.S. national security in that way. The real problem is that people seeing what the United States does on a day-by-day basis, and the documents that Manning's accused of leaking, that WikiLeaks is accused of publishing, are documents that involve the Iraq War, the Afghan War, and diplomatic cables from the State Department that show day-to-day activity in all these areas. And so you see the good of U.S. foreign policy, which does exist. There is some good. You see the bad, you see the ugly and the illegal. And sadly, there's a lot of illegal. And that's what the government is upset about. They don't want the truth being known. How can we, as a supposed democratic country, actually rule our country, pick our government, if we're kept in the dark? We need to know what our government is doing in our name. So Julian Assange is a hero for being a journalist, and Bradley Manning, if he's guilty of what he's accused of, is a hero for blowing the whistle.
Right, attorney Kevin Zeese live with us on the line from New York.